Facebook after this weekend. That's the place to put it all. But so yeah, this is the pit straight. This is where the cars will be starting. This is where the magical moment will go down tomorrow night, when all 20 drivers are taken to the grid. We don't know who's going to be on pole yet. We will know in a few hours, but that's when the excitement starts. So
yeah, last night I was watching up here on the balconies. All of you are going to see that shortly. I think you're all going to be extremely impressed with the speeds that the cars are reaching right here and then hitting the brakes and slowing down. It's like 170 miles an hour in the space of a second. The braking performance on Formula One cars with the carbon brakes and the downforce they have is just something so unique and impressive.
So you guys are almost celebs as well. You might get some waves from the fans in the crowd as well. So this is your time to meet the drivers. So we're coming around on the exit of turn 1, basically into turn 2 now, which is almost barely a corner really.
Yes.
But pit exit on your left. That's where all the drivers are coming straight back out.
Yeah.
So as you can see, it's narrow, it's tight, it's very, very complex. So it's been a real challenge for the drivers to adapt to the conditions and adapt to this new track. But you saw the Ferrari drivers last night were doing really strong when it was going in FP2. And I think they're going to be a real contender this weekend. We'll know who's going to be on pole very soon. But yeah, coming around turn 3, it's turn 4.
Yeah, we're coming up to the first DRS point here, so if the drivers are within a second of the car behind in the race, they're able to hit the button on their steering wheel right around here, and their rear wing slot will tick down, and then they're able to go much faster down the straight, get an advantage on the car in front of them, and pick up 10 to 20 miles an hour. It's amazing just how much effect the DRS has. So there's 2 DRS zones on the track, one here and one in the middle of the strip that we'll be coming up on.
Yeah, so I mean, for the guys with the caps, I like to see you've got it in DRS mode, you've got the right idea. A bit more straight line speed for us on this truck, so hopefully we can pick up some places and get that P1. But yeah, like James said, this is the first DRS zone, so a lot of the drivers, you're going to see them setting up overtakes through those first few corners to really get the run down this first big straight, because it's crucial to get the move done. Because as you'll see very soon, when we get to the Sphere complex, it's very tight, it's very narrow. It's a slow speed section, so it's crucial to get these overtakes done sooner rather than later down this straight, so you can keep that position, build a bit of a gap before we get down the really long strip further around the lap.
Yep.
Over to the left, you've got the massive, what do you even call it, the eye, the wheel,
Yeah,
that big thing?
The London Eye, I'm not sure, the Ferris wheel.
So we're now approaching into the Sphere section.
Yep,
this
turn
is
5.
Turn 5, yeah.
Yep, turn 5 here into a very slow right-hander. Believe it or not, the F1 cars will be going through here in 3rd or 4th gear. They've got 8 gears. And then we'll be coming around the Sphere here into a very tight and technical section. And believe it or not, in race cars, through tight corners is where the most amount of time is gained or lost, because you're in the corner for a longer period of time. You would think that high-speed corners is where generally lap time is found, but it's in the slow-speed corners. So in these slow-speed corners, the mechanical grip rather than the aerodynamic grip of a Formula One car really comes into play, because the cars aren't going very fast, they're not generating the downforce, which is opposite of lift in an aircraft. The wings on a race car are the other way around, which push them into the ground. So yep, here is turns 7, 8, 9, 10 around the Sphere.
So you can see, if you look closely, the guys on the left hand side, the guys on the right soon, you can see the curbs down there. These curves are ever so slightly raised. They're not as big as the likes of the ones in, say, Monaco, for example, which are really steep. But you can see they've got a little bit of a kind of almost like an incline on them. This has been interesting for the drivers, trying to work out how much curve to take. You'll hear that phrase over the weekend, how much curve the drivers can take. You see some drivers, they might go all the wheels over the curb. That's when you get track limits penalties. I don't think that's going to be too much of a case this weekend, but when you're watching the race and when you're watching all the sessions, you look at these curves, you can see how the different drivers have a different technique, and that's what separates the good from the greats, really. And what separates all these drivers with their different driving styles is the tiny little things like that. which as far as we're aware, is what the drivers are still learning lap by lap, session by session. They're going to be fine-tuning everything tonight in the last free practice session, and then qualifying is where they've really got to nail it. And that's where, as both the drivers, that's the biggest pressure, really, is the qualifying lap. You've got one lap to make it count. If you don't make it count, it's game over. You know, at least it's very hard to work back from there.
Yeah.
So this is when the pressure is on tonight. You'll see the drivers functioning at the highest level they ever function. This is where they earn their money. You know, putting together that perfect lap, and that's what we always chase as drivers, is that perfect lap. And I don't think we've probably never done the perfect lap, but we've got those kind of bruised egos that believe that we can. That's why we keep doing it. So that's what all the racing drivers have got, really. So yeah, so we're now heading down to turn 11 and 12.
Yeah, and these sweepers here, this right sweeper and then the next left-hander are full throttle in 7th or 8th gear. So they're doing nearly 200 miles an hour through here. And just with how much downforce and how lightweight a Formula One car is, it's hardly a corner to those guys. It's just easy football, believe it or not. Down into a very tight left-hand corner here, and you'll just see with the way the inside curve is set up here, they've deliberately made this corner very tight to try and promote overtaking here. The tighter the corner is, the better the opportunity to try and outbrake someone, get alongside them and make an overtaking move. So this is a place in the race tomorrow night where it's going to be an action zone. As you see, it's just super tight. They could have put the curb over here, but then it wouldn't have been as good of an overtaking zone. Onto the famous Las Vegas Strip. Here we are.
So for the enthusiastic F1 fans, you might see some similarities with the likes of Baku and Singapore, the other street circuits with these really long straights and the really tight corners just before them. We noticed how we've got a really tight left-hand corner before a really long straight. It's something very, very similar to Baku, and as we know, Baku promotes some insane overtaking and some really exciting action. This straight is the second longest straight in Formula One behind Spa, so it is actually slightly longer than the straight in Baku, and I'm sure, as you know, it takes a very long time to get down that straight. So it's crucial for the drivers to get a really clean exit out turn 12 to get the run all the way down here, because if you lose 2 kilometers an hour on the exit of that corner, you're losing that the whole way down the straight. Yes. And the guy behind who gets the corner right, he's just going to drive straight past you. And especially as we're heading into the DRS zone after this kind of little bend, the DRS opens, the cars get that increased straight line speed, and that's where the action happens. It's a very long straight. We're still...
Yeah, and for those of you that are new to Formula One, DRS stands for Drag Reduction System. So it's a button that they'll push on the steering wheel, and the rear wing will
drops down, basically. Opens away, reduces the drag, increases the straight line speed. Because when they're going down these big straights, they don't need that extra downforce.
Here's the sign here on the left, probably and the right as well. DRS, yeah, see this. So the drivers know at that point they'll get a light on the steering wheel, which confirms they're going to be able to use the DRS if they're within a second behind of the car ahead of them, and then they push the button, and then they're able to get a 10 to 20 mile an hour advantage. And then the moment they hit the brake, it's electronically controlled that the wing will go back up, which is what they need to help slow the car down. The more wing you have in the car, it's slower on the straight, but it helps you stop and go through the corners faster.
And we missed it because it's basically a location that is done by satellite and by kind of sensors. But each of these DRS zones have got a DRS detection zone. And that's the point where when, say, 2 drivers are within a second of each other, as they both drive through this zone, that's when it picks up the gap between the 2 cars. So it's crucial that these drivers get within that 1 second gap as they go through the detection zone, so they can pick up the DRS and be able to use that DRS down these straights. Because I think all of us have agreed that this race is going to be won and lost on who can get these good exits, who can look after their tyres, and ultimately who can keep it clean. Because as you guys have seen, it's narrow, it's a tough circuit. The drivers are all finding challenges with it. You might have seen last night as we're coming into turn 14 now, this is a really heavy braking zone. The guys are going from 220 miles an hour all the way down to basically 80 miles an hour, 70 miles an hour into here. So there's quite a few went straight on down there last night. Yeah, you saw that, yeah? So it's a very, very tough braking zone for these guys. You're going from one of the fastest parts of the circuit in the calendar down to one of the slowest parts of the the circuit in the calendar. So it's a real challenge. And again, we're now onto another straight, which is again another sign of that crucial kind of aspect of getting these corner exits right, because it's going to hurt the drivers as much as it's going to help them basically with the overtaking.
Yeah, so we're on the home run of the lap now, coming off the strip. The drivers are going up through the gears, up to 8th gear, getting up to 200 miles an hour again, and then coming through this flat out kink where you'll all be watching the cars at top speed and then braking into turn 1. And last night I saw them braking in there from top speed, and it's just so impressive how quickly these cars can stop in such a short distance.
And the sparks as well, that's the exciting thing. We all love to see the sparks that comes from the skid blocks at the bottom of the car. It looks cool, it's night time, it just adds to that Vegas excitement, it fits with all the lights and everywhere. And this is a place where you'll really see that. The track drops down ever so slightly into here, kind of drops away from the drivers, which has proven to be a little bit of a challenge, but this is where the downforce is working. It's working overtime. It's pressing that car down by about 2.5 tons. The equivalent of basically one of these trucks is pressed on top of that rear wing. That's the equivalent, to give you an idea of the scale of that downforce. So in theory, nobody's ever done it. I think someone's planning on doing it very soon. If you drove an F1 car upside down, it would hold itself on the roof. That shows you the scale of this downforce on these F1 cars. It really is the pinnacle of engineering, the pinnacle of motorsport.